It's the Osceola's Seminole Sidelines. For more on the Seminoles, including Osceola's coverage from veteran Seminole insiders, message boards, Osceola virtual happy hours, and more, go to theosceola.com.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the Osceola's Seminole Sidelines podcast, presented by Alumni Hall, where you will find officially licensed FSU gear for the entire family. Please visit Alumni Hall at alumnihall.com or at their Tallahassee store location at 1817 Thomasville Road. My name is Pat Burnham. I'm a football writer for the Osceola and the host of Seminole Sidelines. I am joined today by Osceola recruiting analyst and president of Elite Scouting Services, Charles Fishbein, Osceola football analyst and former FSU offensive lineman, Mark Salva, and Osceola owner and publisher, Jerry Cutts. But before we get started today, I want to remind our Osceola subscribers to log on to the Osceola and click on the Alumni Hall ad to receive a 20% discount code to apply to your online purchases and to sign up for your membership's card for discounts on your in-store purchases. All right, guys, we're back for the first time in a month with a FSU football podcast, and it was a very big month for FSU. It was a very big weekend this past weekend for FSU as Mike Norvell secured 5 commitments, and to make Mark Salva very happy, they were all either offensive or defensive linemen. So Mark and Fish are going to get to expound on these kids, but they secured 5 really strong commitments that saw FSU's recruiting ranking on 24/7 move from 13th last Thursday to 3rd in America today. And of course that may change as more schools add on commitments, but certainly momentum moving forward for Florida State. They secured the commitment of Trevion Williams, a defensive lineman from Crystal Springs, Mississippi, 6'5", 254, a 4-star prospect. Fish, we're going to let you talk about him here in a second. They also secured Quayshawn Sapp, Lee County, Georgia, offensive tackle, offensive guard, 6'5", 320, also a 4-star kid. Antavius Woody, an offensive lineman and defensive lineman from Lafayette, Alabama, another 4-star kid. And then, of course, Bishop Thomas, a defensive lineman from Orlando, Florida, who started out high school in New Orleans at St. Augustine High School. And then Kanaya Charlton, a 3-star offensive guard from Brunswick, Georgia. So big weekend. Fish, let's start where it began. Trevion Williams came in as the first official visit last weekend, came in on a Thursday, and by Friday he had committed to Mike Norvell. And of course you got a chance to see Trevion work out at the elite camp. There's not a whole lot of tape on him, but tell us what you think about Trevion.
He was by far their best player on the defensive line at a very talented. I don't want the other kids to get knocked because I thought they had some great players on the defensive line at their camp, but Trevion was at a different level. I mean, here's a guy that's been underranked. You're talking elite level at everything. Just the one thing I talked about this yesterday with someone else was his hands were so strong that even when he just barely gets his hands on someone, he moves them out of the way. They're so powerful. He can just do so much with his hands, and you need that at that position. But he reminds me a lot, and I know we go over like, who does this guy remind me a lot of? I think the one guy that I compare him to is Broderick Bunkley. Bunkley looked like a man-child in high school. He went to FSU and ended up a very good defensive tackle. I think this kid he can play on the outside. I think he's going to move inside. If you look at him and when you see him in person, his lower body, his trunk, his backside, his legs, he's thick and he's going to get bigger. Here's a kid that's going to easily get to 285, 290 and may even push over 300 because of his body. He's got length. He's very explosive. He can run. You see it on film. You see him playing offense. I think there's some clips of him playing quarterback in high school. This is probably one of the best players that they'll have signed in this year's class, in my opinion. I think he's a top 3 kid along with Travis Hunter and also the McCall kid. I think he's that good.
Where do you project him once he gets to Florida State, gets in the strength and conditioning program? You think he's a defensive end, defensive tackle?
Yeah, I think he's a D tackle. I just think the way that he plays, he looks like a defensive tackle when you see him in person. He's got a wide back. a lot of these type of kids, they come in at like 255, and you just look at their body, how they are built in the lower body. If you have a big base and you have room to grow up upper body, this kid's going to have no problem putting on 35, 40 pounds.
Sully, did you have a chance to watch any of Travion's film?
I did. He throws the ball really well. But, you know, I mean, it's like if you took Cam Newton and put 40 pounds on him and made him a defensive tackle, that's kind of what, you know, what I saw in film. I mean, obviously, I'm looking at junior tape where he's playing all over the field. Just a real athletic looking kid, explosive. You know, he's raw. You're going to have to teach him a lot in terms of, you know, playing the position, because he plays everywhere and he's just so athletic. He just bullies everybody right now. But once he settles in where he's going to be, he'll be a tremendous football player wherever they put him.
Yeah, I watched some of his tape, and you watch him out in space. He's in they used him some in coverage in high school, and the way he's able to turn and run, exceptional athlete. And I think I agree with both of you. I won't prolong my opinions on him. Go ahead, Fish.
Yeah, Corey legit was a quarterback in high school, and I'll never forget one play always stood out with me. It's the best play I've ever seen on a highlight film. He threw a screen pass, and this is a kid that was the same size, 6'4", 265, threw a screen pass, ran 10 yards down the field, and blocked for the guy that caught the ball on the screen pass. That's how big and athletic he was. And most thought he was going to be a DN, and he had that same build this kid had, and ended up well over 300 pounds and ended up a first-round pick. So I see a lot of similarities with someone like Corey Legit as well.
And Legit's had a long NFL career, a very impressive prospect coming out of Miami that ended up signing at Illinois. We thought we had a shot at him at USF, but he ended up signing with Illinois and played for the Chargers for a long time, among others. So Williams started this gold rush of commitments on Friday. Saturday, it even snowballed bigger. The second commitment Norvell was able to get was from Quayshawn Sapp, 6'6", 305, from Lee County, Georgia. And obviously, Mark, I'm going to start with you on this one since Fish got first option on Williams. Give me your impressions of Sapp.
Yeah, this kid is he has a great feel. He's obviously got the size. He's got I love his zone footwork. He's been coached really well. When I watch this kid, he's probably the most polished of all of these guys in terms of his technique. Understands leverage, understands combo blocking, understands all that stuff. That's the easy part. He's going to come in ahead of the others in terms of his ability to assimilate into the scheme, because you know, watching on some of their pass protections, but you know, physically he's got really good size. He can bend. I really like his hands. Real explode. You know, his timing on his punches, both in the run and the pass, look really good. You know, he's got his punch off the ball could be a little better maybe, but I think that's just maybe a function of what they're trying to do. But you know, he is a smooth athlete. That's the thing that stuck out to me, is how smooth he is. So I like him a lot.
Fish, what are your thoughts on Sapp?
Yeah, I mean, he stood out at their camp. What he was talking about, his hands, he almost, like, I don't know if he lunges or he gets off balance and he doesn't get his hands on guys quickly, but a lot of that's technique. I don't worry, and Mark can, go over this more. I don't ever worry about the technique side. And we're going to talk about the Woody kid in a second, because technique's one of his main issues, but the fact that he can bend, he's big, he's physical, he moves really well laterally. I thought he did a very good job at the camp when the edge rusher got way up the field and then came back inside. He was able to recover. He didn't lose balance when he did that. And that shows to me he's athletic to play at the tackle spot. Florida State needs tackles, and I think this kid has the size and length to play on the outside. Now, I don't think he's a left tackle. I think he's more of a right tackle, but his ability, I was very impressed. You just don't know until you see these kids in person. You watch them on film, and a lot of them look good just running a guy over, and that's why they're highlight films. But in person, you can see how they react when somebody counters their first move. So he does a very good job at redirecting. He can sink his hips. He's very fluid, and he comes off the ball very well. I think he's going to be a very good player. He's may not have the upside as we're going to talk about it with Charlton or Woody, but I think he's the most ready-made kid to play early on.
Yeah, and you answered one of my questions. One of the questions I had on my notes that you don't see on film a lot is, does he have good enough lateral movement to be a pass pro, to be good in pass pro at tackle? You think he does? The thing that impressed me on tape was, despite his size advantage and the length and him being 6'6", he plays with very good leverage despite being so much bigger than his high school competition. He looked, Mark, the thing I really liked, if you watch that tape though, is he's always looking for work, right? He's always looking for the next guy to go get a hold of, and he does do a good job of being a dominant run blocker when he plays with a wide base, and he does a great job of staying engaged with his defender based on his tape. But I agree. A great take for Florida State, and I might make the argument that Woody might be more physically ready to play as far as size and strength, but certainly a good-looking prospect. Number 3 to commit that weekend was Kenia Charlton, 6'6", and he listed anywhere from 333 to 350, depending on what service you're looking at. Brunswick, Georgia High School, and a massive human. This is a kid that's been on campus a ton before he committed, came to 2 camps, was at elite camp, mega camp, offensive and defensive lineman camp. So he's been on Florida State's campus a lot, visiting with Norvell and Atkins, and basically said that he had been silently committed for a couple of months. So Fish, give us your thoughts on Charlton.
I mean, he's a grown man as far as size-wise. He's a big kid. You just want to make sure, if he is pushing 350, his ideal weight, I think, is around 320, 325. If he could lose 25 pounds with his ability, then he's going to be a very good player. He's someone, though, I think that hopefully he's not one of these transfer. They're going to bring in 6 guys this year. This kid has to be patient and understand that if he's patient and he's willing to take to coaching and he works hard, he has about as much upside as any of the guys in this class, and I think Mark will elaborate on that more. But the kid's very talented. He moves well. I did go back before this and watch some of his footage. He moves better than I thought. I mean, there was a play in a practice where he was like 30 yards down the field still driving a guy into a pile of kids. So he can do a lot of stuff that you want. But you can't – we always talk about this. You can't teach size. You can't teach athletic ability. The whole thing with guys like this, are they willing to take to coaching? Are they hardworking? Are they going to go in that weight room? Are they willing to be developed? Because this is the type of kid, it's going to come down to what he's willing to absorb and the time and effort he puts in. If he does all the things that he needs to do, then you're talking an all-conference type lineman. If he doesn't, he'll be out of the program in 2 to 3 years,
Sully?
So I think all of these guys show a tremendous effort. Everyone that I looked at on film, they are going through the whistle. And that's encouraging. With guys like Charlton that are this big, first thing I'm going to look for are signs of fatigue, laziness, just kind of guys that don't hustle, the type I'm talking about, just big guys that are always winded. And I saw no sign of that from this guy. That's the first thing that stuck out to me, is this guy hustles, he plays hard. That was number 1. Number 2 for me in this kid is he does some things naturally that you have to coach it a lot with a lot of kids, but naturally he plays with a natural wide base and he never loses it. For me, that's one of the number 1 things I teach. This is the first drill I do out of the gate, is establish a stance and never lose your stance. Always playing with a wide base, and you do that because you're taking, you heard the old cliche, short choppy steps, all that stuff. But it's true. You want to make sure you maintain your base, because that's how you maintain contact. That's how you maintain balance, especially when you're that big. And he does that naturally. I mean, you can tell he's not as well coached as some guys. He's just mauling guys based on his size, but what he naturally does with his hands and his feet, you can't coach. So you got something to build on with this kid. And to reiterate what Fish said, it's up to him. He's got tremendous upside. And if he puts in the work and takes to the coaching and is patient with himself, this kid can be a really good player.
Yeah, my notes were powerful run blocker, like you said, good feet. My note was needs to improve lower body strength to maximize potential. Probably a guard, but if he develops in the weight room and on the training table, he's athletic enough that he could play tackle. Do you guys agree or disagree with that?
Oh, just based on his size, yeah, you got to pack a lantern and a lunch to get around him.
Yep.
Well,
Yep,
listen, they've been playing guards at tackle. So, I mean, any of these big kids that come in will have a legit shot at playing outside.
You're right. All right. Well, the third commitment on Saturday for Norvell was Bishop Thomas from Bishop Moore High School in Orlando by way of New Orleans. You mentioned Fish last week in one of our written reports that you thought they really needed to concentrate on defensive line, and they did with bringing Bishop and Travion in. But he's 6'2", 301, 3-star. Give me your thoughts on Bishop.
I'm always of the opinion if a guy is a Division I Power 5 D tackle, you take as many as those as you can get. You just keep bringing them in. And Odell's done a very good job of finding these under the radar defensive tackles all the way back to LaTroy Gwynn, Andre Fluellen. These were guys that weren't highly rated, and he kind of found. I think this is one of those type of guys that Odell does very well with. He's very explosive off the ball. You see it offensively. You see him playing tight end. I think there's a fade route that he catches on one pass. He's an athletic big guy. You can't teach all of that. Once again, all the physical tools are there. This is the type of kid that if he's willing to be coached up and he gets in that weight program, he cleans himself up a little bit, you're talking an all-conference type player if he does everything he needs to do.
Sully?
Yeah, I saw an athletic kid that obviously plays all over the field. I was kind of taken aback when he's lined up at H-back and lining up in the slot and running go routes and at 300 pounds. And I didn't realize he was playing in that league until I went back and looked at some of his stuff. But he's got explosion, and that's number one for defensive tackles, right? Is come off the ball, establish line of scrimmage, and then have the athletic ability to run down the line and make plays and diagnose and all that stuff. And it looks like he's a good football player for sure. And watching him sit out there and play tight end and H-back, in my mind, I'm thinking Warren Sapp, right? Because when Warren was at Apopka, he was a tight end who moved the defensive line. Now, I'm not saying he's going to be an NFL Hall of Famer, but that's just the name that kind of popped in my head with his size and his athletic ability. He's got a chance for sure.
Yeah, and my notes were dead on with you guys. Powerful, explosive, very quick off the ball when he wants to be. Gets off blocks well, plays with great leverage and inside hands. Really does chase the ball well. At times he plays a little bit too high, but that's with every kid that's ever played football and happens at every level. So, but that's a great take. And then, of course, beauty's in the eyes of the beholder when it comes to anything, really. And I almost called 1-800-Flowers after they got the commitment of Antavius Woody. And I know we all three are bragging on this kid before we started taping. But Mark, since you joined us from Nashville, I'm going to give you first dibs on Mr. Woody.
Yeah, this is Christmas in June for Alex Atkins. This is the BB gun behind the tree that the dad pulls out at the end, right? I mean, this kid is athletic. He's raw, but he can play any number of positions. There was one clip in my mind. I'm watching him play, right? So he's really athletic. He's really got great feet. He can bend. He's got really good size. And I was surprised at how tall he was, watching the film, thinking, okay, wow, if he's every bit of 6'5", that's pretty good. But there was one clip where he was playing center, snapped the ball and pulled around the edge. And because in my mind, I was thinking, this kid could play center. Yep. He's athletic enough. And to have, a center that's that big and athletic to anchor the middle of your line, I think would be tremendous value. I know people are talking about him being a tackle, but that's the thing that popped into my head now. I think he's probably the most athletic of the three in offensive linemen, and explosive, but he's still raw. I mean, he's still going to take some time in terms of refining some things. Is he ready-made? Again, it depends. He's got another year. He's got another season to go. He's got some things that we'll see how I can't wait to see the senior film for sure.
Fish.
My favorite commitment they got last weekend. I just honestly, I didn't know anything really about him until he committed. And then you watch his film. I don't really get excited about a lot of linemen. This kid is, I don't know where he's ranked, but talent wise, he's really, really talented. Now, one thing that I found out from one of my sources was his length he had the biggest or the longest wingspan of any of the linemen they brought in so far. He has the wingspan of a 6'5" or a 6'6" guy. So that it looks like that on film. His arms look like they come down to his ankles.
Yep.
But his athletic ability is off the chain. I really like the way he plays. The only negative that I see, and I don't see it as a negative because offensive line coaches have to break down guys, and he's basically starting with a clean slate. He has a lot of bad habits. He bends, he lunges at guys, things technique-wise that he's going to be able to learn how to do. But I'd rather have him have those issues because a lot of these guys have a lot of bad habits, and you got to break them down break them down to the start and rebuild them up. This kid is basically going to start with a clean slate, and I think he's the type of kid that goes to Florida State, and from like week 1 to 4, you see a bigger jump with him just because he's getting better coaching and he's going to learn a lot of the things that he needs to learn. I think upside, you're looking at an NFL prospect. Now, I that may be crazy for some people that think I say that, but I really think of all the upside of every player they got a commitment from on the O-line this year. This kid has the greatest upside of all the linemen.
Yeah, my notes had above average athlete, if not elite, given his size. Thick, long, athletic, runs extremely well, very good lateral movement, the best prospect they have committed on the OL for 2022. And because of where they are, I agree with Mark that they probably could play center or guard or really anywhere he wanted. And Fish, you had noted that he could probably play defense if he wanted to too. And I do believe that, but I think with where they are, he is a true offensive tackle prospect. And then the other thing I like about this kid is if you watch him on defense, he's a highly intelligent football player. There's a clip where he is chasing the ball, pursuing the ball to the sideline, but he understands exactly where his help is coming from, and he knows that running back's going to get pinned back into him, and he makes a tackle. But a guy that the more I watch, the more I like, and could not agree with you, Fish, more on the fact that I believe that right now, he's the top guy for me. Now they're all good, and you're splitting hairs now, right? Well, some of these kids, but certainly a big week. And listen, this week's probably going to get bigger for Norvell and the staff. Jarrell Powers, a tight end from Duncanville, Texas, is set to commit on Friday. All indications are that he will commit to Florida State based on everything that he said on his official visit. Fish, I don't know if you've had a chance to watch Jarrell on tape. He's a long kid that a very good pass catcher.
Yeah, he's not your traditional tight end. They line him up wide, so he's going to have to learn some inline blocking and stuff and really learn the tight end position. He's more of like the Cam McDonald type of what they already have on campus. I think that's why they're recruiting him, because Cam probably, if he has a good year, will be gone after this year. But he gives them some options. We've talked about it before. Norvell at Memphis loved the tight end position, and that's a room that has a lot of guys in it at Florida State, but
yes,
I don't know how many of them are really good. So like this kid's going to have the opportunity to come in and make an impact right away if he wants to. I mean, you could see the athletic ability. I think there's other guys that are probably higher on their board, but he'd be a good get for them.
Yeah, it's going to be between, as things currently go, at least what he said on Sunday when he was leaving, it's going to be down between Florida State, Oregon State, and Colorado. And you would think that, and of course, we're all biased here because we all have Florida State connections, but you would not think there would be a competition between those three schools. So, but he is supposed to announce on Friday. And we will have that for you. We'll talk more about Jarrell next week if he does commit. And then, of course, one of the bigger name kids that we have not talked about that was on official visit last week that I'm at least anticipating to flip to Florida State is linebacker Jaron Willis from Lee County High School, a teammate of Quayshawn Sapp's. Fish, what do you know? What's the latest on Willis?
I mean, the kid's been saying forever that his favorite school is Florida State, Florida State, Florida State. I just either someone's telling him not to go there. It just seems like a natural fit. They have a major need at linebacker. He's probably one of the better linebackers I've watched on film that they're recruiting. I like EJ Lightsley, Wesley Basant. Those are the three main guys. I think the Demario Tolan kid is already he's going to end up going to LSU or one of those schools. So those are the three guys they need to pull in. Two of those three. If they pull in two, well, they got Omar Graham, so they really just need one more. But I'd like to see them bring in three, just because that position needs an upgrade. And I think Willis is as good as they've recruited the last 5 or 6 years. He's very aggressive. You watch, he plays old school. He runs downhill. He doesn't run around blocks. He'll take on blocks. He's physical. He can cover the flats. I haven't seen him drop back into coverage a whole lot, but he does. He can't cover a wide, like a running back on a swing pass or something. So he can get out there in the flats and do what he needs to do. But would be a kid that can impact at Florida State right away and play year one.
Yeah, and supposedly, I guess Georgia Tech's told him he's going to be a safety. I just don't see him as a safety once he gets to college, but apparently that's the case. Now, I do want to circle back real quick to Antavius Woody. He has not been offered by Alabama. Does that concern you at all, Fish, that they could come back in as he continues to develop?
Well, anytime a kid's that good, you got to be worried. I really, like I said, he's one of the most underrated players in their class. He's an elite level lineman, so you're always going to worry at that position. But I think Alex has done a very good job. They identified their guys early on. And the one thing is, and you know how recruiting is, it wasn't like this with Mark. Mark wasn't like this. They have literally shown these kids the individual love on these visits. And I mean, they overdo it personally for me, but these kids love it. They come on visit. They're like, hey, they make them feel important. And these kids, everything that is wrong with recruiting, Florida State's tapped into that, and these kids like it. And I think these kids are they all came on campus together. They could have easily said, oh man, they brought 10 linemen in this week. But these kids, those linemen are different. They all hang out with each other. It seems like this group, they came in together, they committed together. I think they want to play together.
Yeah, I was thinking to myself, I'd love to know what the pitch is from Alex and Norvell, to these linemen. I'm sure it has something to do with, we want to bring in a foundational group, and we want you guys to be part of that foundational group that turns this program around, and we want to do it starting up front in the trenches, and getting them, hooking them up together and getting them talking, and, just painting this picture of guys growing up together, making Florida State what it once was. And that could be really appealing for a lot of guys, and having the confidence that Norvell is going to be there and be able to pull through with it, and with the personality and motivation that Atkins brings. I think it's a solid pitch that has sticking power, I'm betting it's something along those lines. I'd love to know what it was.
Well,
apparently those rides in that slingshot are very nice.
Listen, there's two things. One, opportunity. They see that. And, those kids, I'm sure they showed them some film, and those kids are like, oh, wow, man, I think I could play here like right now. Forget my senior year. I could come. But I don't think offensive linemen, and Mark, you can probably attest to this, they're not high maintenance. I think these kids came in together, and they did a good job of putting these guys like, hey, you guys are going to be our group. And if you look, there's like 2 or 3 old linemen that came in last week that they're either leading for or have a very good shot. I just think they purposely did that. Like, hey, you guys come in together, you commit together, you are our guys, and you're our future. You're the ones that are going to bring Florida State back. And I think they've done a very good job of doing that with these kids. It's huge that they brought them all in together, and they're already becoming friends, and it's like they're already teammates,
Yeah, no question. It reminds me of that group that we brought in that had, Greg Fry, Clay Shiver, Lewis Tyre, Earl, Todd Fordham, all those guys. They all came in together, all most of them red-shirted. And in 2 years, in 3 years, their sophomore year, we won a national championship. And they were the foundation of it. You know,
Same thing happened with Josue Batias, Bobby Hart, all those guys. They all came in together. I think 4 of the 5 were freshmen when they played Notre Dame in the bowl game, and the following year you saw those kids take their game to another level. You know, and that was their base to that. The reason that 2013 team won is that offensive line got their hands full against Notre Dame in that first half of that bowl game. They made their adjustments. They played well. They came out of that game with confidence. And the following year, they go into spring football as a whole new group. And you saw the success on the field.
Right. I agree.
Well, as we've said several times, Mark, the world is in need of more offensive line.
Absolutely.
We don't have enough. You couldn't have brought 2 quarterbacks in at the same time. That's for sure. As we've learned, you can't even offer 2, let alone bring 2 in on the same damn official visit weekend. Yeah. All right, now it's time to bring in the man that pays the bills. Jerry has been waiting patiently for his time to talk. So, Jerry, you have been following Norvell and these camps going back to the youth camps in May, and I just kind of want to get your insight from your perspective, and you follow recruiting a little bit differently than Fish and I do. From your perspective, how has the month of June impacted your opinion of Mike Norvell and where this program is heading?
Well, the big thing was when Florida State signed him as the head coach. You know, that was the unchecked box. Mike did not have a lot of relationships in the state of Florida. And I think he checked that box this past month. I, for one, don't have any concern about his ability to recruit the state as I did, prior to this past month. When I spoke to him about that, I asked him that question. He said that every school he's been at, they spot recruited Florida, and they spot recruited individuals within Florida, but that doesn't allow you to develop relationships. So he agreed with the concern. And I think that he's answered that concern in his own mind, that they did a great job during the off season, building relationships by phone, and it paid off for them when they had the camps. And so many coaches brought their kids here to those camps.
Yeah, close to 4,000 kids were on campus in June alone. That's 9th through entering 12th graders. And obviously, like you said, made up for lost time with some of the high school coaches. But they have, in the state of Florida, but they have continued to do what they did in his first signing class, which is going to Georgia, going to Alabama and Louisiana. Even the one Florida kid that committed this week, his relationship with this coaching staff started when he was at St. Augustine High School in New Orleans, and that's Bishop Thomas, who is now obviously at Bishop Moore in Orlando. So, yeah, certainly has done a great job with that, but they are going to where they feel like they have the best relationships, which is smart of them to do. So, Mark, what about you from afar? You're kind of watching this from afar. What was how's your perspective changed on, or how's June impacted your opinion of Mike Norvell and what the staff is doing?
Yeah, when we first hired Mike, that was the one question I had was, okay, you got to recruit against Saban, you got to recruit against Kirby, you got to recruit against Mullen. Hasn't had the opportunity to do that on a consistent basis. You're right in the middle of all of that. And how are you going to do? So that was the concern. We all know about recruiting. It's about being organized and tremendous effort and follow through and building relationships with kids. And it takes a lot of energy. It takes a lot of drive. It takes a lot of discipline. And Mike is all of those things, obviously. Everything I've ever hear about him or hear him speak, he's always promoting the program. He's always, talking with an eye on recruiting. And, now can he close the deal? And this month, shows he can close the deal when he's targeted some guys. I mean, I feel 50 million times better about it, and we're not going to win them all, and understand that. And we may lose some of these guys, 1 or 2, maybe, who knows? But he's gone up against some heavy hitters in recruiting, and we're the number 3 ranked class right now, right? So we're doing something right. And I'm very, very encouraged. And
right.
Doing it with our record, with the recent history that we've had. That's the other thing.
Yeah, that is impressive. You're right. That is impressive. That's not you normally don't associate a 2-6 program with a third-ranked recruiting class. That is for sure. All right, guys, we're going to take a break and get a message in from our sponsor, Alumni Hall. Then I want to come back and talk a little bit more about you. We're talking about Mark keeping this recruiting class intact, and obviously talking about the difference between help being here and help being on the way, and some of the reaction that the fan base has had in June. But we'll be right back with Seminole Sidelines in 30 seconds.
Alumni Hall, where you'll find officially licensed FSU gear for the entire family, including brands like Nike and Champion, plus great gifts for your favorite Seminole and home decor too. Miss some of the old Seminole throwback logos? Check out our College Vault collection. Shop online at alumnihall.com and let our great customer sales team ship to you within days, or pick up in store in Tallahassee. You'll find us in the Miracle Plaza Shopping Center on Thomasville Road. Students and military get 10% off in store, and Osceola subscribers get 20% off in store and online with their digital membership cards. Alumni Hall.
Welcome back to Seminole Sidelines, presented by Alumni Hall. Guys, we've been talking about recruiting extensively in this podcast. And of course, as you guys well know, recruiting is never over until the kid puts his signature on that national letter of intent. As you alluded to earlier, Mark, this class may not stay totally intact as we go through the fall, but for a variety of reasons, win losses, relationships with other schools, whatever the case may be. So this is the Fish and Mark, and either one of you can start. What does FSU have to do on and off the field to make sure they hold on to the majority of this class? History tells us that not all 14 of these kids that are currently committed will be committed, but they can hang on to most of them for sure. But we've already seen several kids decommit for 2022 and 2023. What do they have to do to hang on to this class?
Well, the easy answer is during the season is win, keep everything positive, moving in a positive direction. That's first and foremost. But, digging deeper, when you commit early to a school, all that essentially does is put a target on your back, right? Now every school going after that kid knows who I'm recruiting against. And it's incumbent, hopefully the relationships and the communication between the kids and the people around the kids is good enough. You have to know who's talking to these guys and how often they're talking and what they're saying. You have to anticipate what they're gonna say to them and how they're going to try to get them turned. And you've got to be proactive in making sure that you head that off, because we got guys that people are going to want, and they're going to come after them. And that's going to be critical, that line of communication, and that these recruiting coaches and this staff stays on top of these kids. The work isn't done when they commit. The work is just getting started. And that's important. I've seen it too many times where I got a kid committed, I take a deep breath, that one's done. Sometimes it is, but most of the time it isn't. And you got to stay on top of it. So, we'll hopefully, I don't know how Mike presents his case when he asks a kid to commit. Is that, does that mean no more visits? Does that mean, does that mean does he tell them not to commit until they're absolutely sure, that kind of thing? Or does he just take a commit the second he can get it and pressure? I don't know. But I will say this, if they're good, solid commitments, you're at a good starting spot and you're ahead of the game, and you need to stay on top of it as a staff.
Fish?
I think they've been realistic and upfront with these kids. Like, hey, listen, we're not going to be playing. I think most of these prospects know they're not going to be playing for a national title or ACC title next year. This is a 5, 6, 7 in that window, 5, 6, 7 wins. Any of that, if they do 5, 6 wins, I think most of this class is going to stay together. If you look at their top end of this class, Travis Hunter loves Florida State. I think they could go 0-12, honestly, and the kid will stay in the class. And he's become very close with Sam McCall, and Sam likes Florida State because he wants to play in the state of Florida. A.J. Duffy's a quarterback. He knows the opportunities there. Most of these other guys that are in their class, maybe a Travion Williams, they would lose on a kid like that because he's from Mississippi. He's not really, they just started recruiting him. But I think most of these players will stay committed to him. Aaron Hester is a legacy kid. Bishop Thomas is a prospect that he doesn't have a ton of schools going after him now. And he's not one of the higher rated kids in Florida as far as that position either. So I think most of this class will be to keep together as long as they show progress and that the product is better than it's been. These players feel that they're going to be the difference between them winning 5, 6, 7 games and competing for an ACC title and a national championship. I think a lot of it, these kids believe in their ability to help turn Florida State around. You talk about guys that are Mike Norvell recruits. I think you see a lot of similarities with a lot of these kids. They don't seem like high maintenance players. You meet these kids, they always talk about team. I've spoken to some of these guys, their team. It's not about themselves. And me personally, I think if they win 5 to 7 games, about most of this class minus 1 or 2 will stay together.
All right. Obviously, June has been a great month for Florida State. The fan base is exceedingly excited about what Mike's doing with recruiting, and thus translates to expectations, unfortunately, for the fan base. Now, listen, I'm on Twitter because of what I do, because I follow recruiting. They're about 10% of the population's on Twitter. But with the success they're having in June, I'm seeing a lot of Florida State fans starting to get unrealistic expectations. Now, I know that there's some legitimate people on Twitter, and there's some crackpots on Twitter. There's no doubt about that. But I read a guy, a Florida State fan, yesterday after they got the commitment from, I believe, Woody, or 2 days ago. He had gone through the schedule and now thinks FSU is going 12-0. And he's not the only. I've heard people talk about 9, 10 wins. So, Jerry, I want to ask you this question. The fan base is more excited than it has been in the last 5 years that I can remember. But the help is on the way. It's not here. It's particularly on the offensive line. These guys, probably most of them, will not be ready to have a significant impact on the program to 2023, 2024. Will this fan base keep their enthusiasm for where Norvell's going with the program through what could be, by Florida State standards, an average 2021 season?
Well, Pat, I think, the obvious answer is Mike talks about speak success, and it doesn't hurt for the fans to be excited. I think getting excited and thinking positive are all positive things, and can probably help you. This momentum can help you get some 5-star kids that are still sitting out there for 2022. So, there's certainly nothing wrong with positivity. You're exactly right. I mean, those kids don't arrive here until 2022. So it's not going to help you beat the game in the first game. But it does create a positive attitude and, speak success in everything you do isn't a bad strategy. So that's where I see it. We've got a long road to hoe in 2021 to get to 7 wins, and these kids aren't going to be able to help you.
Mark, what are your thoughts on obviously the fan base excited? How do you see them continue the enthusiasm for the program if it's an average season?
Yeah, I agree with Jerry. It's sure better than the other way for sure. But, momentum in recruiting can translate hopefully into momentum throughout the whole program. I will say this. I remember one of the first things Coach Bowden would do when the coaches came off the road after signing day. We'd have our meeting before mat drills, and first thing they would do is sit in that room and look at everybody in the room and says, hey, you heard a lot about these guys coming in, and they're all great kids. They're all great guys, but we're going to win with the guys in this room, and that's the fact of the matter is that, help is on the way, but what we're going to accomplish, with what's in this room already. And, the good feelings, the good vibes, that can only help. It keeps everybody positive, keeps everybody motivated. The program trending up. You always want to be part of something that's getting better, that's growing, and you just feel it. It's just good. It's a good thing.
Well, there's also another person that's gotten excited, but not in a good way, about Florida State's recruiting. At least I think that's who he's talking about. Florida State graduate and Miami head coach Manny Diaz made this comment recently. We're not a high pressure outfit. There's a lot of schools that kind of press kids to try to commit to get some fake momentum. They can win the recruiting bake-off in the month of June, but that's not signing day. We want to be authentic. He might not have been talking about Florida State, but it certainly sounds like Florida State. And obviously, the way both programs have gone the last 3 years, their rivalry has somewhat lost its luster. But Manny seems to be adding some fuel to the fire and trying to get this thing back to where it used to be on a national level. It sounds like he might feel a little bit threatened by what Florida State's doing. Fish, you're down there. You've been around the Miami program. Who was Manny talking about, and why would he talk about him in June?
Yeah, I was standing there when he made the comment to the media, and I mean, there's not much to look into it other than who he's talking about is Florida State. But at the end of the day, his team right now has how this rivalry is. You win the game the year before and they dominated Florida State. They have the right to talk the crap that they're talking. But I don't really take much out of it. I don't think it's going to make an impact either way. Florida State's recruiting well because I personally think that they have a great opportunity for a lot of players to come in and play right away. And these prospects talk about that all the time. One of the number one things is opportunity. And I think right now, of the 3 schools, they have the greatest opportunity prospects to come in and play year one or play early on is at Florida State. Well, while Miami and Florida, they've been stacking their recruiting classes the last 2 years. So that opportunity is not there as much. So Miami right now, they're recruiting at a different level. They had a very good class last year. They're waiting and seeing it for top prospects. If you go look at the kids they're really recruiting, the Shamar Stewarts, the Nigella Kellys, Julian Armellas, those type of guys, those guys are all going to wait till probably December, early signing period. So their recruiting class is going to lag back until they land some of those kids. But I mean, I really don't take much from it. I thought it was a silly comment, but to me, it's a who care thing. So,
Mark, what was your reaction to that comment?
Yeah, my first inclination is to say you need to worry about your program before you start worrying about somebody else's. And if your attention is on that, then that's an issue for them. He has no business, commenting on what we got going on. And I guarantee you, Norvell isn't paying any attention to that. So that's just kind of my impression on it. In the end, we're going to forget about that next week. And Fish is right; they're going after some big fish. I just hope they have a backup plan if things don't work out.
Yeah, well, it's great. It's great food for fodder for a podcast. Jerry, what were your thoughts when you heard that quote?
I imagine his alumni took offense to the fact that he said we're not a high pressure organization. I think Miami fans want them to be always putting pressure on. So as a former Miami Hurricane fan, that was my first reaction. What do you mean you're not high pressure?
Yeah, I just thought it was, I thought that it spoke volumes to what Mike and his staff have done. Recruiting, going even back to the youth camps. They have got Florida State's name all over the state. And I think that Manny feels a little bit threatened.
Yeah. And he should.
I don't think you make that comment for any other reason. I guarantee you Mike Norvell's not sitting in Tallahassee thinking about what Manny Diaz is doing.
I guarantee he's not.
But apparently Mike's gotten in Manny's head. So anyway, interesting. I'm glad he gave me some off-season stuff to talk about, and he got me fired up about the fact that there's a reason to be pissed off at Miami again. So that's my least favorite program in the state. So I'm enjoying it. Hey, speaking of Miami, Fish, I do want to ask you, you mentioned one of the kids. I want to talk about a couple of legacies, Armella and Marvin Jones Jr. Marvin was on campus for unofficial visit, as has Julian. Where does FSU stand with those two kids? I talked to a recruiter from a rival school who believes they have a legitimate shot at Marvin Jones Jr., that he wants to do his own thing. What are you hearing?
On Julian Armella, I think right now LSU is a team to beat. He has there's two guys that are from St. Thomas that signed with LSU the last couple of years, and Armella's over there. It just seems like they've never gotten real good traction with the kid. I know they had him on a visit for that Midnight Madness thing. It just doesn't seem like they haven't caught traction with him. Whenever he's supposed to come up, there's some excuse. They finally got him up for the event in early June. I think he'd be a great get, but if you look at the way they're recruiting, there's not many spots left, and I think they see him more as a guard than a tackle. And I don't think he's as big of a priority for them now that they've landed some of these other kids. I do think Marvin Jones is the number one priority in the class. They have to sign him. You could tell me, oh, well, his dad played there. He doesn't want to look. His dad has a locker enclosed in glass. He's one of the best players to ever play at Florida State. He is like the most important recruit in their class. Just from a perception standpoint, they have to land him. And I think they lead for him. But they're going to have to fight off the Alabamas and these other schools that want him because he's a big-time player.
Oh, he's freaky good. There's no doubt about that. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out. But you and I had talked a little bit about Armella offline, so I just want to ask you about it while we were sitting here. Guys, we are about, I believe, Michael Tank's days away from the start of the football season, 68. I believe was Michael Tank's 68?
Yes, he was.
All right, I think we're 68 days away from college football season. It's been one of the shorter off seasons I can remember. I think July will probably be a slow month because there's no really active recruiting period, no camps at least until the end of July. Guys, what's the one thing you're looking forward to in August or from the football season right now? What's the one date thing that you're looking forward to as we head into the holiday weekend?
Mark, I'll jump in. I want to see what the team looks like physically. I want to see what the weight program's doing for these guys. I'm really interested to see how these guys have developed over the last couple months and what they're going to look like going into fall practice and the Notre Dame game.
So along Fish's line, to me, that the development of the players in the weight room is the most critical thing. I'm also curious to see if Emmett Rice is fully healthy and Schaefer on the offensive line, Schrader, because I think those two guys can be critical to the future of the 2022 season.
Yeah, my favorite thing is that first scrimmage in the fall, because it's really the last time that you have a spring type deal. But I always remember – when the spring, it's such a different deal, right? You're working on individual development for the most part and some basic scheme things. But when the fall starts, you're really honing in, trying to get ready for the season, trying to get ready for that first game. And, there was just a different vibe when you say first team up, that's the first team. I know there'll be competition going into it, but, and how they're clicking. And when I see that first scrimmage, I hope I can't wait to see how they're clicking with, Milton and the line and the defense and, just want to see that sharpness that we obviously didn't see last year because we didn't have spring, and having a full cycle with these guys. It's really a cycle and a half. You want to consider the season and from 2020, just to see. I think we're going to see massive improvement. That's what I think. I think the jump between what we saw in the fall, having a full spring, getting their full implementation of their program, I can't wait to see that first scrimmage, see what they look like.
Besides the smell of the grass in August, because it does smell different in August than any other month. I think Mark, you may agree with me. There's something about the smell of grass in August that's just different. I do miss that. The other thing I want to see is if the offensive line can improve its pass protection enough to where McKenzie Milton can be protected and secure the job as starting quarterback. What did they do with Jordan Travis? So that would be the one thing I mean, there's a lot of questions I have, but it's the one thing I do want to see is if they can prove enough to where McKenzie turns out to be the starting quarterback, they can protect him. How do you get Jordan Travis on the field with McKenzie Milton? So that would probably be the one thing I want to see. But guys, hey, we got plenty of time to talk about this. We got about 6 weeks before the start of or about 5 weeks actually before the start of camp. I hope we'll come back next week. I want to talk a little bit about college football expansion and dive in more into expectations for Florida State and the other teams in the ACC coming in the next year. But I want to thank Fish, Sully, and Jerry for joining me. Thank Alumni Hall for sponsoring the podcast. And if you're an Osceola subscriber, please go to the Osceola and click on the Alumni Hall ad to sign up for your 20% discount code and your membership card, which gets you discounts on in-store purchases. And if you're not an Osceola subscriber, please go to the Osceola.com website. Go to the subscription page and put in FSU20 to receive a 20% discount off annual subscription rate of $74.95. We hope that everyone has a great July the 4th weekend with friends and family, and we will be back next week to talk more FSU football and FSU athletics. Thanks for joining us.
This has been another edition of the Osceola's Seminole Sidelines. To subscribe to the Osceola, go to theosceola.com. Go Noles!